Chapter 1. Awakening in Silk and Shadows. The first thing I noticed wasn't the silk sheets beneath my skin or the unfamiliar weight of diamonds around my throat. It wasn't even the masculine scent of bergamot and danger that clung to every breath I took in that opulent bedroom. It was the gun, chrome-plated and lethal. It rested on the mahogany nightstand beside a crystal tumbler of what looked like whiskey, catching the morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. My heart hammered against my ribs as I sat up, the Egyptian cotton sheet falling away to reveal I was wearing nothing but a black silk nightgown I'd never seen before. Where the hell am I? The bedroom was a study in masculine power. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound books lining the walls, and a massive four-poster bed that could have housed a small family. Oil paintings of what looked like Italian countryside hung in ornate frames, and the carpet beneath my bare feet was so thick it felt like walking on clouds. This wasn't my cramped studio apartment above the bakery. This wasn't anywhere I'd ever been. Yesterday had been my 25th birthday. I remembered leaving work early, remembered stopping at the corner bodega for a bottle of cheap wine to celebrate alone, remembered walking down the dimly lit street toward home while texting my sister about our weekend plans. Then, nothing. A sharp knock echoed through the room, making me jump. Before I could answer or hide, the door swung open to reveal a mountain of a man in an expensive black suit. His scarred face was impassive, but his dark eyes swept over me with what might have been respect. "Good morning, Mrs. Salvatore," he said in a gravelly voice that carried the hint of an Italian accent. "The boss is waiting for you in his study, Mrs. Salvatore." "I think you have the wrong person," I managed, pulling the sheet higher. "My name is Elena Martinez, and I have no idea how I got here or—" "With respect, ma'am," the man interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. "You are exactly who we expected you to be. The boss will explain everything." He gestured toward a walk-in closet. "Your clothes are prepared. Breakfast will be served in 20 minutes. He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "And Mrs. Salvatore, welcome to the family." The door clicked shut with the finality of a coffin lid. I sat there, trembling, trying to piece together fragments of memory that felt more like dreams. Had someone drugged me? Kidnapped me? The rational part of my mind screamed that I should be looking for an escape route. But something deeper, something I didn't want to acknowledge, whispered that I was safer here than I'd been in a very long time. The closet revealed designer clothes in exactly my size, from silk blouses to leather boots that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I chose the simplest outfit I could find, dark jeans and a cream sweater, and caught my reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman staring back at me looked like Elena Martinez, but different somehow. The diamond necklace I still wore caught the light, and there was something in my eyes I'd never seen before. Not quite fear, not quite excitement, but something hungry and alive that made my stomach flutter. 20 minutes later, the same man, I was beginning to think of him as my guard, led me through a maze of corridors lined with original artwork and fresh flowers. The house felt enormous, all marble floors and vaulted ceilings that echoed our footsteps. Through tall windows, I caught glimpses of manicured gardens and what looked like armed men stationed at regular intervals. What have I gotten myself into? The study doors were heavy mahogany, carved with intricate designs that looked old-world European. My guard knocked twice, waited for a muffled response, then pushed them open. "Mrs. Salvatore," he announced, and I realized he was never going to call me by my real name. The man behind the massive desk looked up from a stack of papers, and the world tilted on its axis. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with carefully maintained stubble, and eyes the color of aged whiskey that seemed to see straight through to my soul. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, wearing a black shirt rolled up to reveal forearms marked with intricate tattoos. But it was his smile that stopped my breath. Slow, predatory, and somehow tender all at once. "Elena," he said, and my name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a threat combined. "Happy birthday, cara mia. I trust you slept well." His voice was velvet over steel, cultured but with an edge that promised violence to anyone who crossed him. When he stood and moved around the desk, I noticed he was tall, well over 6 feet, and moved with the fluid grace of a predator. "I'm sorry, but there's been some mistake," I said, proud that my voice barely shook. "I don't know who you are or what you want, but I need to go home. I have work tomorrow, and people will be looking for me." He stopped just close enough that I could smell his cologne. Expensive, intoxicating, dangerous. His eyes searched my face with an intensity that made heat pool low in my belly despite my fear. "No mistake, Bella," he murmured, reaching out to trace the diamond necklace at my throat with one finger. The touch sent electricity through my entire body. "And no one is looking for you. As far as the world is concerned, Elena Martinez died in a car accident yesterday evening." The room spun. "What?" "My name is Dante Salvatore," he continued, his hand moving to cup my cheek with surprising gentleness. "And as of last night, you belong to me." The words should have terrified me. Instead, something dark and needy unfurled in my chest, and I realized with horror that part of me, a part I'd never acknowledged, wanted nothing more than to belong to this dangerous, beautiful man. What was wrong with me? Chapter 2. When the Dead Walk Among Demons. "You're insane," I whispered, jerking away from his touch. The loss of contact felt like tearing away part of my skin. "You can't just... People don't just disappear. My sister, my job, my landlord." "Your sister Rosa received a call this morning from the hospital," Dante said, settling back against his desk with casual elegance that somehow made him more intimidating. "She was told you were killed instantly when a drunk driver ran a red light. She's planning your funeral as we speak." The words hit me like physical blows. Rosa would be devastated. She'd blame herself for not insisting I stay home on my birthday, for letting me walk alone at night. The image of my little sister crying over my supposed death made my knees buckle. Dante was beside me instantly, his arm around my waist, guiding me to a leather chair that probably cost more than my car. His touch was firm but careful, like handling something precious and breakable. "Why?" I managed through the tightness in my throat. "What could you possibly want with me? I'm nobody special. I work at a bakery, I live paycheck to paycheck, I've never even gotten a speeding ticket." "You're special to me," he said simply, crouching down so we were eye level. "And that makes you the most important person in this city." His fingers traced along my jaw, and I hated how my body responded. Pulse racing, skin heating, breathing becoming shallow. This man had stolen my life, my identity, everything I'd ever known, and my traitorous body still wanted to lean into his touch. "I don't understand any of this," I said. "Yesterday I was Elena Martinez, Baker's assistant. Today I'm supposedly dead and married to a man I've never met. How is that possible?" Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of what might have been guilt. "The marriage certificate was filed 3 months ago. Perfectly legal, witnessed, and notarized. As far as the state of New York is concerned, we've been husband and wife since June." "That's impossible." "I would have remembered, would you?" His thumb brushed across my lower lip, making my breath catch. "Tell me, Elena, what do you remember about the night of June 15th? The date meant nothing to me at first. Then slowly fragments surfaced. I'd been walking home from work late, exhausted from a double shift. There'd been rain, making the streets slick and empty. A black car had pulled up beside me, and someone had rolled down the window. "You offered me a ride," I breathed, the memory crystallizing. "It was pouring rain, and you said you'd see me walking this route every night for weeks. You seemed safe." His smile was sharp as a blade. "Very good, Kara. What else?" More pieces fell into place, each one making less sense than the last. The ride in his luxury sedan, heated seats and soft music. We'd talked about books, about dreams, about how lonely the city could be at night. He'd been charming, funny, nothing like the dangerous predator sitting before me now. "You took me to dinner," I whispered. "That little Italian place in Little Italy. We talked for hours." 4 hours and 37 minutes, he corrected. "You had the osso buco. You laughed at my stories about growing up with 3 sisters. You told me about your mother's lullabies and how you learned to bake from your grandmother." The intimacy of those details terrified me. He'd listened, remembered everything. But that night felt dreamlike now, soft around the edges in a way that didn't make sense. What did you do to me? I gave you what you needed, he said, standing and moving to pour himself a drink from a crystal decanter. Safety, security, a life where no one could hurt you again. I wasn't being hurt, weren't you? He turned back to me, whiskey glass in hand, and his eyes held a knowledge that made my stomach clench. Miguel Santos ring any bells, Elena? The name hit me like ice water. Miguel, my ex-boyfriend who'd become increasingly possessive, increasingly violent. Who'd broken my ribs 6 months ago and sworn he'd kill me if I ever tried to leave him. Who I'd been hiding from ever since. Changing my schedule, taking different routes home, always looking over my shoulder. How do you know about Miguel? I know everything about you, Dolcezza. I know he put you in the hospital twice. I know you've been living in fear for months, jumping at shadows, barely sleeping. Dante's voice turned deadly soft. I know he was planning to corner you on your birthday. In fact, he was waiting outside your apartment building yesterday when my men collected you. Your men were under strict orders to be gentle. The drugs in your system were mild, just enough to keep you calm during the transition. You were never in danger from us. My head spun trying to process this. So you kidnapped me to protect me from my ex-boyfriend? I claimed what was already mine, he corrected, moving closer. The moment you got in my car 3 months ago, you became mine to protect. The marriage certificate was just a formality. I never agreed to marry you, didn't you? He pulled out his phone, swiped to a video, and held it out to me. On the screen, I watched myself in what looked like a small chapel. I was wearing a simple white dress I'd never seen before, standing next to Dante in front of an officiant. But it was my face that shocked me. I looked happy, glowing, laughing as Dante slipped a ring onto my finger. I don't remember this, I whispered. The human mind has ways of protecting itself from trauma, he said gently. Sometimes it buries memories that are too overwhelming to process. What trauma? You're saying I married you willingly and then just forgot? I'm saying you've been living in survival mode so long, you forgot what it felt like to be truly safe. That night, for a few hours, you remembered. You let yourself imagine a life without fear. His words resonated with something deep in my chest. A longing I'd buried so completely I'd forgotten it existed. The video showed me kissing him at the altar. Not the desperate kiss of someone being forced, but the tender, hopeful kiss of a woman in love. But I didn't remember loving him. I didn't remember any of it, Miguel, I said suddenly. If he was waiting for me yesterday, he won't be waiting anymore, Dante said quietly. The way he said it, flat and final, made my blood run cold. What did you do? What I do to anyone who threatens what's mine. Before I could process the implications of that statement, a sharp knock interrupted us. The same guard from earlier entered without waiting for permission, his face grim. Boss, we have a problem. The Torino family is asking questions about the girl. They know she's here. Dante's entire demeanor shifted, the tender husband disappearing behind the mask of a deadly predator. How many? 12 cars spotted in the area. More coming! Lockdown protocol! Now! As alarms began wailing somewhere in the distance, Dante turned to me with eyes that held no warmth, no gentleness, only lethal calculation. Welcome to my world. Elena, he said, pulling the gun from his waistband with practiced ease. I hope you're ready to learn what it really means to be a Salvatore. Chapter 3. Blood, Bullets, and Broken Prayers. The transformation was terrifying to witness. One moment Dante had been the man who remembered how I liked my coffee, who'd listened to my grandmother's stories with genuine interest. Now he moved with lethal precision, barking orders in rapid Italian while his men responded with military efficiency. Take her to the safe room, he commanded the guard. Marco. I'd learned his name was, without looking at me. No. The word left my mouth before I could stop it. Dante's head snapped toward me, amber eyes blazing with barely controlled fury. This is not a negotiation, Elena. The Torinos are animals, and if they get their hands on you, then don't let them. I stood on shaking legs, surprising myself with my steadiness. But I'm not hiding in some panic room while you fight a war I apparently caused. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe even approval. You didn't cause this. The Torinos have been looking for an excuse to move against us for months. You're just the perfect excuse? The perfect target, he corrected grimly. My weakness, visible for everyone to exploit. The words hit deeper than they should have. 3 months of missing memories, and I was already being used as a weapon against him. I'm sorry. His expression softened for just a moment. You have nothing to apologize for, cara mia. This is what I chose when I chose you. Another guard burst through the doors. Boss, they're at the gates. Perimeter team is holding, but they've got military-grade equipment. Dante's jaw tightened. How many casualties? None yet, but Johnson took shrapnel. He's bleeding pretty bad. Without hesitation, Dante handed me his gun, the weight of it shocking in my small hands, and started rolling up his sleeves. Where is he? East Wing, sir. But your orders were... My orders were to protect this house and everyone in it. That includes Johnson. Dante's voice carried absolute authority, but I caught something else underneath. Genuine concern for his men. I followed them through corridors I was beginning to recognize, past priceless artwork and fresh flowers that seemed obscene in the context of a battle. The East Wing had been converted into what looked like a medical facility, complete with surgical equipment and monitors that beeped urgently. Johnson was a young man, maybe 25, with kind eyes and blood soaking through the makeshift bandages on his shoulder. He tried to sit up when Dante entered. Boss, I'm fine. Just a scratch. Lie down before you pass out and make my job harder, Dante said, but his tone was gentle as he examined the wound. His hands, which I'd seen handle guns with deadly precision, were steady and careful as he cleaned the injury. You're a doctor? I asked, stepping closer despite Marco's disapproving look. Field medic, Dante replied without looking up. You learn to patch people up quickly in this business. He glanced at me briefly. Elena, there's surgical thread in the cabinet behind you. The blue package. I found it with trembling fingers, watched as he stitched Johnson's shoulder with the same meticulous care I used when decorating wedding cakes. The young man bore the pain stoically, but his face was gray with blood loss. Tell me about your family, Johnson, Dante said conversationally as he worked. Your sister just had a baby, didn't she? Yes, sir. Little girl named Sophia. She's perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, screams like a banshee. Johnson's voice was weak but fond. And your mother, how's her treatment going? I watched, fascinated, as Dante kept the young man talking while he cleaned and closed the wound. This wasn't the cold mafia boss who'd just ordered a lockdown. This was a man who knew his people, who cared about their families, who stayed calm under pressure to save lives. There, Dante said finally, securing the bandage. You'll live to spoil that niece of yours. But you're on desk duty for 2 weeks, no arguments. Boss, I need someone I trust watching the security feeds anyway. The Torinos didn't just show up here by accident. Dante's expression darkened. Someone told them about Elena. The implications of that hit me like a slap. Someone in Dante's organization had betrayed him. Betrayed us. An explosion somewhere in the distance made the lights flicker. Dante was on his feet instantly, but he paused to squeeze Johnson's uninjured shoulder. Rest. That's an order. As we left the medical wing, I caught Dante's arm. He turned, eyebrows raised at my boldness in touching him. That was... I struggled for words. You saved his life. It's what leaders do, he said simply. But I saw something vulnerable in his eyes. We protect our own. Is that what I am? One of your own? He studied my face with an intensity that made my knees weak. You're more than that, Elena. You're... Another explosion, closer this time. Cut him off. Plaster dust rained from the ceiling, and emergency lighting bathed the corridor in red. They're inside, Marco reported through his earpiece. South entrance has been breached. Dante's mask slipped back into place, but for a moment I'd seen the man underneath. Someone who carried the weight of protecting dozens of people, who knew their families and their fears, who stayed calm in crisis to save lives. Someone worth trusting. The safe room, Elena. Now. Let me help, I said impulsively. You can stay alive, he said fiercely, gripping my shoulders. You can let me do what I need to do without worrying that you'll be caught in the crossfire. His thumb brushed across my cheek, and I realized I was crying. When had that started? I don't want to hide while you fight, I whispered. And I don't want to live in a world without you in it, he replied, so quietly I almost missed it. Please, Dolcezza, give me this. The endearment, spoken with such raw honesty, broke something inside my chest. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Marco stepped forward to escort me, but Dante caught my hand. In one fluid motion, he pulled me against him and kissed me. Not the gentle kiss from our supposed wedding video, but something desperate and claiming and terrified. When he released me, his forehead rested against mine. When this is over, he murmured, we're going to talk about everything. About the missing memories, about what happened between us, about why you married me. And if you don't make it through this, his smile was sharp and feral, then the Torinos don't know me very well. As Marco led me toward safety, I looked back to see Dante checking his weapons with practiced efficiency. But his eyes found mine across the corridor, and for just a moment, the dangerous mafia boss disappeared entirely. What I saw instead was a man terrified of losing the one thing that mattered more to him than power. More than money, more than his own life, he was terrified of losing me, and God help me, I was terrified of losing him too. Chapter 4. The Mother's Gambit. The safe room was a fortress within a fortress. Steel-reinforced walls, independent air supply, and enough provisions to last weeks. But all the security in the world couldn't quiet the sound of gunfire echoing through the mansion above me. I paced the small space like a caged animal, Dante's gun still heavy in my hands. Marco stood guard by the door, his earpiece crackling with updates that grew increasingly grim. East wing secure, south entrance holding, kitchen compromised. Each report made my chest tighten. Where was Dante? Was he hurt? The not knowing was torture. How many men does he have? I asked Marco, desperate for distraction. 43 in the house, another 60 on the grounds, he replied without taking his eyes off the monitors. The boss runs a tight operation, and the Torinos? Marco's jaw clenched, enough to make this interesting. On the security feeds, I could see muzzle flashes lighting up the gardens like deadly fireworks. Men in expensive suits moved through shadows with military precision, and I realized this wasn't just a mafia war. This was a coordinated assault on everything Dante had built. Why now? I wondered aloud. Why come after him when he's strongest? Because he's not strongest, a familiar voice said from behind us. I spun around to see a woman emerging from what I'd thought was a solid wall, a hidden entrance I'd missed entirely. She was perhaps 60, with silver hair pulled into an elegant chignon, and intelligent dark eyes that reminded me startlingly of Dante's. Marco's hand went to his weapon. Mrs. Salvatore, you should be in the East safe room. Nonsense. I needed to meet my new daughter-in-law. Her smile was warm but sharp as she approached me. I'm Francesca Salvatore, Dante's mother. The family resemblance was unmistakable now. The same aristocratic bone structure. The same way of moving like they owned whatever space they occupied. But where Dante projected controlled danger, his mother radiated the kind of power that came from decades of surviving in a world that tried to crush strong women. I don't understand what you meant, I said carefully. About Dante not being strongest. Francesca's expression grew serious. My son commands respect through fear and loyalty, but he's never been vulnerable before. Never had something he couldn't bear to lose. Her eyes fixed on me. Love makes even the most powerful men weak, Kara. And his enemies know it. The words hit like ice water. You're saying this is my fault. I'm saying this was inevitable the moment you walked into his life. She moved to the monitors, studying the feeds with a strategist's eye. The question is whether you'll be his salvation or his destruction. Before I could respond, an explosion much too close shook the entire room. Dust rained from the ceiling, and several monitors went dark. They're in the main house, Marco reported grimly. Boss is falling back to the central corridor. On the remaining screens, I could see Dante moving with lethal grace, his men covering his retreat. But there were too many attackers, and they kept coming. My heart stopped as I watched him take cover behind a marble pillar, blood staining his white shirt. He's hurt, I breathed. Francesca followed my gaze. Shoulder wound. He's had worse. How can you be so calm? That's your son out there! And panicking won't help him. She turned to face me fully. But you might. I don't understand. The Torinos didn't just come here to kill Dante, Elena. They came to take you. Alive. Francesca's voice was steady, but I caught the tremor underneath. They want to use you against him, to break him slowly. They think holding his wife will give them power over the Salvatore family. The implications crashed over me. So if I surrender myself, you give them exactly what they want and probably get my son killed in the process, she finished sharply. No, there's another way. Before she could explain, the lights cut out entirely. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in red, but the silence from Marco's earpiece was deafening. Comms are down, he reported. We are blind. Not entirely. Francesca moved to a panel I hadn't noticed, revealing an array of switches and monitors that looked military-grade. Dante doesn't know about this system. I had it installed after his father died. You've been watching him? I've been protecting him. There's a difference. Her fingers flew over the controls, bringing up new camera angles, thermal imaging, and what looked like building schematics. Now, Elena, I need you to listen very carefully. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but it's the only way to save my son. On the thermal display, I could see the heat signatures of at least 30 men moving through the mansion's upper floors. They were systematically sweeping each room, closing in on Dante's position like a noose. There's a tunnel system beneath the house, Francesca continued. Built during Prohibition, updated by my husband, and known only to family. It connects to the wine cellar, the garage, and 3 different exit points. Why are you telling me this? Because you're going to use it to get behind enemy lines. She handed me a small device that looked like a modified phone. This will let you communicate with Dante directly. The Torinos are jamming standard frequencies, but this uses a different bandwidth. I stared at the device, my mind reeling. You want me to go out there? Into a war zone? I want you to remind my son that he's not fighting alone. Francesca's eyes held a steel that explained where Dante had inherited his strength. The Torinos are counting on his desperation to make him reckless. But if he knows you're safe, if he knows you're fighting with him instead of cowering, he'll think strategically instead of emotionally, I finished, understanding dawning. Exactly. She moved to another hidden panel, revealing an arsenal that would have made the military jealous. Can you shoot? My father taught me when I was young, but that was years ago, and it comes back, like riding a bicycle, except the bicycle can kill people. Francesca selected a smaller pistol and handed it to me, along with extra ammunition. Point, squeeze, don't jerk the trigger. And Elena, don't hesitate. The Torinos won't. Marco looked like he wanted to protest, but Francesca silenced him with a look. Your job is to get her to the wine cellar tunnel. After that, she's on her own. The weight of what she was asking hit me fully. She wanted me to crawl through underground tunnels, emerge behind enemy lines, and somehow turn the tide of a battle between trained killers. It was insane. It was also the only chance Dante had. Why? I asked as she led me to another hidden door. Why trust me with this? You don't even know me. Francesca paused, her hand on the release mechanism. I know my son was dying inside before he met you. I know he's fought harder tonight than I've ever seen him fight, because he has something worth protecting. And I know that if you let fear win, we'll lose the best man either of us has ever known. The door slid open silently, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Go, she said softly. Bring my boy home. As I stepped into the tunnel with Marco behind me, I heard her whisper words that chilled my blood. And pray the Torinos don't know about the explosives they're standing on. Chapter 5. Love letters written in gunpowder. The tunnels were a labyrinth of brick and shadow, older than the mansion above and carved with the desperation of men who'd needed to disappear quickly. My footsteps echoed despite my attempts at stealth, and the weight of the pistol in my hand felt like carrying liquid fear. Marco moved ahead of me with practiced silence, leading us through turns that seemed to spiral deeper into the earth. The air grew thicker, heavy with the scent of aged wine and something else. Gunpowder, maybe, or the metallic tang of old blood. How much further? I whispered. Wine cellars just ahead. From there, you'll take the north passage to the kitchen service entrance. Marco's voice was grim. That's where I leave you. The communication device Francesca had given me suddenly crackled to life. Static filled the tunnel, then cleared to reveal Dante's voice, strained, breathless, but alive. Mother, if you can hear this, the East Wing is compromised. They're using military-grade equipment, and someone gave them our security codes. I pressed the transmit button with shaking fingers. Dante, it's Elena. The silence that followed stretched so long I thought the connection had died. Then, Dolcezza, what the hell are you doing on this channel? You should be in the safe room. Your mother has other plans. I tried to keep my voice steady as we reached the wine cellar. Thousands of bottles lined the walls like sleeping sentinels, and the air here was cool, almost peaceful. If not for the distant sound of gunfire, it could have been romantic. Elena, listen to me very carefully. Dante's voice was tight with control. Whatever my mother told you to do, ignore it. Get back to the safe room now. I'm not abandoning you. The words came out fiercer than I'd intended. Tell me where you are. North corridor, pinned down behind the main staircase. But Elena, I'm coming. No. The word was a command that seemed to echo through my bones. There are 12 men between you and me, all armed, all trained to kill. I won't let you won't let me? Something dangerous unfurled in my chest. I'm not your possession, Dante. I'm your wife. Even as I said it, the words felt strange, foreign, but also right. Whether I remembered marrying him or not, whether this was real or some elaborate kidnapping scheme, something fundamental had shifted inside me. This man was mine to protect, just as I was his. Cristo, he breathed, you're going to give me a heart attack. Only if the Torinos don't get you first. I was moving now, following Marco's directions through a passage that seemed to angle upward. I'm in the tunnels. Where exactly are you positioned? A burst of gunfire through the comm made my blood freeze. When Dante's voice returned, it was rougher. Took another hit. Nothing serious, but I'm running low on ammunition. Dante, I need you to understand something. Cara mia. His voice dropped to an intimate whisper that somehow carried more weight than his earlier commands. If something happens to me tonight, if the Torinos win, my mother will get you out. There are accounts in Switzerland, properties in Italy. You'll be safe. Stop talking like you're going to die. And you need to know, the memories you're missing, they're not gone because of trauma, Elena. They're gone because I asked you to forget. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled, catching myself against the tunnel wall. What? You were so scared after Miguel, so broken. You said yes to marrying me. But you also said you wished you could forget the fear, forget the pain, start fresh. His voice cracked. So I found someone who could do that. A specialist who could edit memories, remove the trauma but leave everything else. My world tilted. You had my memories erased. Only the bad ones. Only Miguel and what he did to you. But something went wrong. You forgot our entire relationship instead. Forgot falling in love with me. Forgot choosing me. Forgot our wedding. A sound that might have been a sob. I was going to find a way to reverse it, but then the Torino started moving, and I needed you safe first. I leaned against the cold brick, mind reeling. The gaps in my memory, the dreamlike quality of that first night with him, the way our supposed wedding video felt like watching someone else's life. It all made horrible sense. You should have told me. I should have done a lot of things differently. Another burst of gunfire. Closer now. But Elena, I need you to know. Everything you felt for me before was real. You chose me. You loved me. And if we both survive tonight, I'll spend the rest of my life earning that back. I found myself moving again, driven by something deeper than thought. The service entrance Marco had described was just ahead. A narrow door that would put me in the kitchen, behind enemy lines. Dante, I said softly. I may not remember falling in love with you the first time, but I think I'm falling in love with you now. The silence stretched between us, heavy with possibility and terror. Elena, he finally whispered, promise me something. Anything. Promise me that when this is over, When the Torinos are dead or gone, you'll let me court you properly. Let me take you to dinner, bring you flowers, show you who I am when I'm not fighting for our lives. Despite everything, the guns, the blood, the impossible situation, I found myself smiling. That sounds like a pretty good first date. Dio, I love you. The words were fierce, desperate. I love your courage, your stubbornness, the way you're probably about to do something incredibly dangerous against my direct orders. You know me so well, I murmured, reaching for the service door handle. Elena, wait. Before you go up there, his voice gentled. There's something else you should know. About the explosives my mother mentioned. My hand froze on the handle. What about them? She's not bluffing. The entire mansion is wired to blow if things go badly. There's a dead man's switch in her safe room. If her heartbeat stops, if she doesn't check in every hour, the whole place goes up. With you in it? With all of us in it. She's protecting the family secrets, the ledgers, everything that could destroy our allies if it fell into enemy hands. His voice was steady, accepting. It's what a good capo does. The weight of that knowledge settled on my shoulders like a lead blanket. Francesca wasn't just willing to sacrifice herself to save her son. She was willing to sacrifice everyone, including me, to protect what remained of their empire. Dante, I said, pushing open the service door to reveal the mansion's kitchen in chaos. Overturned tables, broken glass, and the acrid smell of smoke. I'm coming for you. I know you are, Dolcezza. I'll be waiting. As I stepped into the war zone above, I heard him add quietly, Try not to get yourself killed before I can marry you again. Chapter 6. The Devil's Nephew and Stolen Memories. The kitchen looked like a tornado had torn through it. Copper pots scattered across marble floors, cabinet doors hanging from broken hinges, and blood, too much blood, splattered across the pristine white walls. I pressed myself against the doorframe, trying to steady my breathing while my eyes adjusted to the chaos. Voices carried from the main corridor. Harsh, commanding, speaking in rapid Italian that I only partially understood. But I caught enough. La moglie, find the wife. Viva, alive. They were hunting for me specifically. The knowledge should have terrified me, but instead, it sharpened my focus to a razor's edge. If the Torinos wanted me alive, that gave me an advantage they didn't know I had. I moved carefully through the debris, avoiding the broken glass that would announce my presence. The service hallway beyond the kitchen would take me toward the main corridor where Dante was trapped. But first I needed to understand what I was walking into. The communication device crackled softly. Elena, what's your position? Kitchen. I can hear them searching. I pressed myself against the wall as footsteps approached. How many in your immediate area? Too many. And Elena, there's something you need to know about. The device went silent. My heart hammered as I waited for his voice to return, but only static answered. Heavy footsteps entered the kitchen behind me. I held my breath, finger on the trigger of my pistol, as a man in an expensive suit picked his way through the wreckage. He was older than Dante's men, with silver threading through his dark hair and the kind of confidence that came from decades of violence. Bambina, he called softly in accented English. I know you're here. I can smell your fear. I remained frozen, watching him move closer to my hiding spot behind the industrial refrigerator. My name is Vincent Torino, he continued conversationally, and I have a proposition for you, Mrs. Salvatore. He knew where I was. The realization hit me like ice water. He was drawing this out, playing with me. You see, your husband killed my son 6 months ago. Shot him like a dog in the street over some business disagreement. Torino's voice hardened. But I'm not an unreasonable man. Eye for an eye, as they say. I could see his reflection in the stainless steel surface of the refrigerator. He was close now, maybe 10 feet away, his own weapon drawn but held casually at his side. Here's my offer, Kara. You come with me voluntarily, and I'll make Dante's death quick, painless even. You fight me, you hide, you make this difficult. He chuckled darkly. Well, let's just say I have men who enjoy their work a little too much. Counteroffer, I said. stepping out from behind the refrigerator with my gun trained on his chest. You leave my husband alone, and I won't put a bullet in your heart. Torino's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that had probably been the last thing many people ever saw. Well, well, the little baker has teeth after all. More than you know. I don't think you understand the situation, Bambina. Even if you kill me, which you won't, I have 30 men in this house. Your husband is bleeding out behind a marble pillar, and my people are closing in on his position as we speak. He was trying to rattle me, but his words confirmed what I'd hoped. Dante was still alive. You know what I think? I kept my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. I think you're stalling. I think your 30 men aren't having as easy a time as you expected. Something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty. Maybe even worry. And I think, I continued, taking a step closer, that you're down here in the kitchen instead of up there fighting because you're scared of what happens when Dante Salvatore stops playing defense. Torino's mask slipped entirely. You think your husband is some kind of god? He's just a man, Cara. A man who made the mistake of loving something he can't protect. Maybe. But you made the mistake of threatening someone he loves. The shot came from behind Torino, not from my gun. He dropped to the marble floor like a stone, blood pooling beneath his silver hair. I spun, weapon raised, to find Marco emerging from the service hallway. Marco, how did you... Service tunnels connect all through the house, he said grimly, moving to check Torino's pulse. Dead. Good. The relief flooding through me was so intense it made my knees weak. Is Dante alive, for now? Marco's expression was grim. But we've got bigger problems. Mrs. Salvatore's been monitoring communications and she picked up something you need to hear. He handed me a different device, this one showing a recorded conversation. I recognized one voice immediately, Vincent Torino. But the other, the Salvatore woman, is the key. Once we have her, Dante will do anything to get her back, even hand over the East Coast territories. And if he doesn't, then we kill him and take them anyway. But having his wife gives us leverage with the other families. They'll think twice about retaliating if we're holding their precious queen. The second voice continued. The security codes I gave you should get your men inside without triggering the main alarms. But be careful. Francesca Salvatore is more dangerous than her son in some ways. Don't worry about the old woman. By morning, the Salvatore family will be history. My blood turned to ice as recognition hit. The second voice, the one providing security codes and inside information, belonged to someone I'd heard just hours ago. Dr. Harrison, the specialist who'd supposedly erased my traumatic memories. He's the leak, I whispered. Marco nodded grimly. Gets worse. Mrs. Salvatore ran a background check after hearing this. Dr. Harrison doesn't exist, never has. The man who worked on your memories is Vincent Torino's nephew. He's been feeding them information for months. The implications crashed over me like a tidal wave. My memories, they weren't just erased incorrectly. They were deliberately scrambled. To make you more dependent on the boss, more easily controlled, or at least that was the plan. Marco's expression softened slightly. But you fell in love with him anyway, didn't you? Even with your memories compromised. I thought about the way Dante's touch made my skin sing, how his voice could calm my fears or set my blood on fire, about how I'd chosen to enter this war zone rather than hide in safety, and how the thought of losing him felt like losing a part of my soul. Yeah, I said softly. I did. The communication device crackled back to life. Dante's voice, strained but alive. Elena, where are you? Here, I said, pressing the transmit button. Dante, Dr. Harrison, I know. My mother just filled me in. His voice was tight with rage. That bastard not only scrambled your memories, he's been feeding the Torinos intel for months. Every security measure, every safe house, an explosion somewhere above us shook the entire kitchen. Dust rained from the ceiling, and several more windows shattered. What was that? I asked. Marco was already moving toward the main corridor. North Wing just went up. That wasn't part of Mrs. Salvatore's plan. Dante's voice cut through the static, urgent and commanding. Elena, listen to me. The Torinos aren't just here for you. They're here to destroy everything. They've got their own explosives, and they're going to bring down the whole mansion. With us in it? With everyone in it. including their own men if necessary. The sound of gunfire punctuated his words. "This isn't just a kidnapping anymore, Dolcezza. This is a war of extinction." As if summoned by his words, more footsteps echoed in the service hallway. But these weren't the measured steps of Dante's men. These were the quick, urgent movements of people fleeing something. "Marco," I said, raising my weapon. "We need to move, now." He nodded, but before we could take a step, the kitchen door burst open. 3 Torino soldiers poured in, weapons raised, faces grim with the knowledge that their boss was dead and their mission was falling apart. The first one spotted me and smiled, the same predatory expression I'd seen on Vincent Torino's face. Well, he said. "Mrs. Salvatore, you're coming with us." I raised my pistol, finger on the trigger, and thought about everything Dante had told me about choosing him, about the life we could have together if we survived this nightmare. "Like hell I am," I said, and pulled the trigger. Chapter 7. When angels learn to kill, the first shot took down the soldier who'd called me Mrs. Salvatore. The recoil jolted through my arms, but my father's training kicked in. Sight picture, breathe, squeeze. The man dropped without a sound, surprise frozen on his face. Marco moved like lightning, his weapon barking twice in rapid succession. The other 2 soldiers fell before they could return fire, their blood mixing with Vincent Torino's on the pristine marble floor. "Good shooting," Marco said, reloading with practiced efficiency. "Your father teach you that?" "Among other things." My hands were shaking now, adrenaline and shock warring in my system. I'd just killed a man. The weight of that should have crushed me, but all I felt was grim satisfaction. He'd wanted to take me from Dante. He'd chosen his fate the moment he walked into this kitchen. "Elena," Dante's voice crackled through the comm, urgent with worry. I heard shots. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine." 3 down in the kitchen. I stepped over the bodies, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Where do you need me?" "I need you safe." But since that's apparently not happening. A burst of gunfire punctuated his words. "North corridor, main staircase. And Elena, there are a lot more than 3. Marco led me through the service hallway, past portraits of Salvatore ancestors who seemed to watch our progress with dark, knowing eyes. The sounds of battle grew louder. Not just gunfire now, but the crash of breaking furniture, shouted orders in multiple languages, and underneath it all, something that made my blood run cold, screaming. "How many men has Dante lost?" I asked as we approached the main corridor. Marco's jaw tightened. "Too many. But the boss, when he's protecting something he loves, he becomes something else entirely. Something the Torinos weren't prepared for." We reached a service door that would put us behind the main staircase. Through the frosted glass, I could see muzzle flashes lighting up the corridor like deadly lightning. Marco held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. We burst through the door into absolute chaos. The grand corridor that had been pristine hours ago was now a war zone. Marble columns were pockmarked with bullet holes, priceless artwork hung in shreds, and bodies, both Salvatore and Torino, lay scattered across the Persian carpets like fallen chess pieces. And in the center of it all, behind the massive marble staircase, was Dante. I barely recognized him. The cultured businessman who'd served me breakfast was gone, replaced by something primal and lethal. His white shirt was soaked with blood, some his, some not, and his movements were those of a predator who'd been backed into a corner. As I watched, he took down 2 attackers with clinical precision, then dove for cover as automatic weapons fire shredded the air where he'd been standing. "Cristo," Marco breathed. "He's magnificent when he's angry." Dante's eyes found mine across the battlefield, and for a moment, the chaos faded. Even at this distance, I could see the relief, the love, the absolute terror in his gaze. Then a Torino soldier stepped into my line of sight, weapon trained on Dante's position. I didn't think. I raised my pistol and fired. The soldier spun and fell, clutching his shoulder. Not a kill shot, but enough to save Dante's life. Now that, Dante's voice came through the comm, warm with approval despite the circumstances, was excellent marksmanship. "Dolcezza." "I'm full of surprises," I replied, already moving to a better position. What followed was the most terrifying and exhilarating 15 minutes of my life. Marco and I worked our way around the corridor's perimeter, using service passages and hidden alcoves to outflank the Torino forces. It wasn't heroic. It was brutal, efficient, and necessary. I discovered I was better at this than I'd ever imagined. Not just the shooting, but the thinking, the planning, the split-second decisions that meant the difference between life and death. Every time a Torino soldier threatened Dante, every time I saw blood on his clothes or heard him grunt in pain, something cold and calculating took over. These men had come to destroy my husband, my life, my future. I returned the favor with interest. 6 down on the east flank, I reported through the comm, reloading behind a marble statue of some long-dead Salvatore patriarch. 8 on the west, Marco added. But boss, we've got a problem. There are still too many, and they've got us surrounded. Copy that. Dante's voice was steady, but I could hear the exhaustion underneath. Elena, how many rounds do you have left? I checked my ammunition. Half a clip. Not enough. Marco, get her out of here. No. The word came out harsher than I'd intended. Dante, listen to me. Your mother said there were 43 men in the house, 60 on the grounds. How many have we taken down? A pause. Maybe 25 total. So we're outnumbered 3-1, possibly worse. I closed my eyes, thinking fast. But they don't know about the explosives, do they? Elena, what are you thinking? What I was thinking was insane. What I was thinking could get us all killed. What I was thinking might be our only chance. Your mother's dead man switch. What exactly triggers it? If her heartbeat stops? If she doesn't check in every hour, or... His voice trailed off as he realized where I was going. Or if she activates it manually. How long would we have? Elena, no. Absolutely not. How long, Dante? A long pause, filled with the sound of gunfire and distant explosions. 2 minutes. Maybe less. Enough time to get to the garage. If we ran like hell and didn't stop for anything. His voice was tight with understanding and terror. But Elena, if we don't make it, then we die together instead of apart. I keyed the comm again. Mrs. Salvatore, if you can hear this, I need you to do something that's going to sound crazy. Francesca's voice came through clearly, calm as if she were discussing the weather. I'm listening, Cara. In exactly 60 seconds, I need you to blow this place to hell. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, incredibly, Francesca laughed. I knew I was going to like you, she said. 60 seconds, starting now. The next minute was pure chaos. Dante emerged from behind the staircase like an avenging angel, cutting down anyone between him and the garage entrance. Marco provided covering fire while I ran, my heels clicking against marble as I sprinted toward the man I loved. 30 seconds. Francesca's voice rang through the comm. Dante caught me as I reached him, his arm going around my waist as we ran. Behind us, Torino soldiers shouted in confusion and alarm. They'd finally figured out something was wrong, but too late. 20 seconds. The garage door was just ahead. Marco was already there, starting one of the armored vehicles. Dante practically threw me into the passenger seat before diving in himself. 10 seconds! Dio, I hope you're clear. Marco floored the accelerator just as the world exploded behind us. The mansion, that beautiful, deadly fortress where I'd learned to love a dangerous man, disappeared in a pillar of fire and smoke that lit up the night sky like a second sun. The shockwave hit our vehicle like a giant's fist, sending us skidding across the gravel drive. When the world stopped spinning, I found myself in Dante's arms in the back seat, both of us breathing hard and covered in dust and blood. Are you hurt? He asked, his hands running over me with desperate efficiency. I'm fine. You? I'll live. He pulled me closer, burying his face in my hair. Elena, what you did back there. You saved us all. Through the rear window, I could see the mansion burning. Somewhere in that inferno lay the bodies of Vincent Torino and his men, along with any evidence of the Salvatore family's business dealings. Your mother? I asked quietly. Safe. She had her own escape route. His arms tightened around me. She always does. As we drove into the night, leaving the flames behind us, I realized that everything had changed. The woman who'd woken up confused and frightened in Dante's bed was gone, burned away in the crucible of battle. In her place was someone harder, stronger, more dangerous, someone worthy of being Dante Salvatore's wife. Chapter 8. Choosing darkness over daylight. The safe house was nothing like the mansion, a modest cabin hidden in the Catskill Mountains, surrounded by dense forest and the kind of silence that made city dwellers nervous. But it had running water, a generator, and most importantly, no bullet holes in the walls. I stood at the kitchen window, watching dawn paint the mountains gold while coffee brewed behind me. My reflection in the glass showed a stranger. Hair tangled with dust and debris, clothes torn and blood-stained, eyes that held knowledge I'd never wanted to possess. I'd killed 3 men last night. The thought should have horrified me, but all I felt was a hollow satisfaction. They'd threatened Dante, threatened our future. They'd chosen their fate. "You're awake early," Dante's voice came from behind me, rough with exhaustion and something deeper. I turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, shirtless, with fresh bandages covering the worst of his wounds. Even injured, even exhausted, he moved with that predatory grace that made my pulse quicken. "Couldn't sleep," I admitted. "Too much adrenaline, I think." He moved closer, stopping just outside my personal space, close enough to touch, but giving me the choice. "Always giving me the choice, even now. Regrets?" he asked quietly. I considered the question seriously. Did I regret the violence, the blood, the way I'd felt coldly satisfied watching my enemies fall? Did I regret choosing to fight beside him instead of cowering in safety? "No," I said finally. "Should I?" His smile was soft, almost sad. "Most people would." "I'm not most people." "Apparently." "No," he agreed, reaching out to trace a smudge of dirt on my cheek with gentle fingers. "You're extraordinary. You're dangerous. He paused, searching for words. "You're exactly who I fell in love with the first time." The touch of his skin against mine sent electricity through my entire body. After everything we'd been through, after seeing him at his most lethal and protective, the attraction between us had evolved into something deeper. Something that felt like gravity, inescapable, fundamental, necessary. "Dante," I said softly, "what happens now?" His hand stilled against my face. "That depends on you, Dolcezza. On what you choose. What are my options?" He stepped back, running a hand through his dark hair. "My mother has already arranged new identities for both of us. Clean papers, offshore accounts, properties in countries without extradition treaties. We could disappear, start over somewhere safe. And the other option. We go back, rebuild what was destroyed, take over the territories the Torinos left vacant." His eyes met mine, unflinching in their honesty. "But Elena, you need to understand what that means. More nights like last night. More enemies, more violence. A life where people will always be trying to hurt you to get to me." I moved to the coffee maker, pouring 2 cups with hands that barely trembled. The domestic normalcy felt surreal after the night we'd had. "What do you want?" I asked, handing him a mug. "I want you safe," he said immediately. "I want you happy. I want to take you somewhere beautiful and spend the rest of my life making you forget that men like Vincent Torino exist." "That's not what I asked." He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee like it held answers. "I want to rebuild. Not just the business, but something better. Something worthy of the woman you've become." He looked up at me. "I want to create an empire I can be proud to leave to our children. Our children." The words hit me like a physical blow, conjuring images I hadn't dared to imagine. A little girl with Dante's eyes. A boy with his father's protective instincts. A family built on love and violence in equal measure. And if I choose safety? If I ask you to walk away from all of this? Then we leave tonight and never look back. His voice was steady, certain. "Elena, I need you to know. You are more important to me than power, than money, than revenge. More important than anything." I believed him. That was the terrifying part. I believed every word. "There's something else you should know," I said, setting down my coffee with careful precision. "About last night, about the fighting. Elena, I was good at it." The words came out in a rush. Not just the shooting, but the thinking, the strategy, the way it felt to protect you. I was good at it. And I liked it. His eyes darkened with something that might have been pride or desire or both. I know. Most women would be traumatized. They'd need therapy, medication, years to recover from what I did last night. You're not most women. No, I'm not. I moved closer to him, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his amber eyes. I'm the kind of woman who falls in love with a dangerous man, who chooses to fight beside him instead of hiding behind him, who looks at a burned mansion full of bodies and feels satisfied instead of guilty. Elena, his voice was rough, desperate. I'm the kind of woman who belongs in your world, Dante. Not despite the violence, but because of how I handle it. He set down his coffee mug and reached for me, his hands framing my face with reverent care. Are you saying... I'm saying I choose you. I choose us. I choose to rebuild something worthy of the name Salvatore. I smiled, feeling more certain than I had about anything in my life. But I have conditions. His eyebrows rose. Conditions? I'm not just your wife or your weakness to be protected. I'm your partner, equal voice in decisions, equal role in building whatever comes next. Done. And I want that proper courtship you promised. Flowers, dinner dates, the whole thing. Just because we're building a criminal empire doesn't mean we can't be romantic about it. His laugh was pure joy, transforming his face from dangerous predator to the man I'd fallen in love with. Anything else? Just one more thing. I stood on my toes, bringing my lips close to his ear. Next time someone threatens our family, I want to be the one who kills them. The sound he made was half laugh, half groan, all desire. His arms went around me, pulling me against him with desperate hunger. Dio, I love you, he murmured against my throat. I love your strength, your darkness, your absolutely terrifying competence with firearms. Show me, I whispered. He did. Right there in the kitchen of that modest safe house, with dawn light streaming through the windows and the taste of violence still on our tongues, he showed me exactly how much he loved the woman I'd chosen to become. Later, much later, as we lay tangled together on the narrow cabin bed, I traced the tattoos on his chest and thought about the future we were choosing. It wouldn't be safe. It wouldn't be conventional. It would be dangerous and difficult and absolutely perfect. Elena, Dante said softly, his fingers combing through my hair. Are you sure? Really sure? Because once we go back, once we start rebuilding, there's no going back, I finished. I know. And you're not afraid? I thought about that seriously. Was I afraid? Of the violence, the enemies, the constant danger that would shadow our lives? Yes, I said honestly. But I'm more afraid of who I'd become without you, of living a safe, boring life and wondering what we could have built together. His arms tightened around me. Then we'll build something magnificent, cara mia. Something worthy of our children's children. Promise me something, I said, lifting my head to meet his eyes. Anything. Promise me that no matter how powerful we become, no matter how many enemies we face, you'll never stop looking at me the way you're looking at me right now. His smile was soft, tender, and absolutely devastating. Like you're the most beautiful and dangerous thing I've ever seen? Exactly like that. That's an easy promise to make, Dolcezza, because that's exactly what you are. As sleep finally claimed us, I dreamed not of the violence we'd left behind, but of the empire we would build together. Beautiful, terrible, and absolutely ours. Chapter 9. Betrayal tastes like blood and brass. 3 weeks later, I stood in the penthouse of a Manhattan high-rise, watching the city spread out below like a chessboard waiting for our next move. The view was intoxicating. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware that the balance of power in their world had shifted forever. Behind me, Dante's voice carried the authority of a man born to command as he spoke with the heads of the 5 remaining families. The Torino territories were ripe for division, and every player in the city wanted their piece. Mrs. Salvatore. I turned to find Carmine Benedetti approaching, his weathered face respectful but wary. At 72, he was the oldest of the family heads, a man who'd survived 6 decades in this business by being very careful about who he underestimated. Mr. Benedetti, I replied, extending my hand. His handshake was firm, testing, the way men greeted each other in this world. Good. I had no intention of being dismissed as just another mafia wife. I have to say, what you did 3 weeks ago, it was impressive. And terrifying. His smile held genuine admiration. Vincent Torino thought he was hunting a lamb. Instead, he found a lioness. The lamb was an illusion, I said quietly. The lioness was always there, waiting for the right moment to show her teeth. Indeed. He studied me with calculating eyes. Dante is a lucky man, but luck can be dangerous in our world. It makes men overconfident. Before I could respond, Dante's voice cut through the room like a blade. Gentlemen, we have a problem. The temperature in the penthouse seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marco stood beside my husband, holding a tablet that displayed what looked like surveillance footage. The other family heads, Benedetti, Romano, and Castellano, moved closer, their conversations dying instantly. What kind of problem? Romano asked, his thick Brooklyn accent making the words sound like a threat. The kind that involves federal agents, RICO charges, and 20 years to life, Dante replied grimly. Show them, Marco. The tablet's screen filled with images that made my blood run cold. FBI surveillance photos of our safe house in the mountains, license plates from the cars we'd used during our escape. Worse, photos of us entering this very building an hour ago. Someone's been feeding information to the feds, Marco said quietly. Same pattern as before, but this time it's not the Torinos they're working with. The silence in the room was deafening. 5 of the most dangerous men in New York stood frozen, each calculating threats, alliances, and escape routes. But my mind was working differently, processing details others had missed. The timestamps, I said, moving closer to examine the tablet. Look at the timestamps on these photos. Dante's eyes met mine, understanding flickering there. He'd taught me to think like this, to see patterns, connections, the threads that bound conspiracies together. What about them? Castellano demanded. They're too perfect, I explained, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. Surveillance photos showing us arriving at the safe house within minutes of our actual arrival. Photos of us leaving for the city taken from an angle that captured both our faces clearly. This isn't surveillance, it's documentation. Meaning? Benedetti's voice was sharp with interest. Meaning someone wanted these photos to exist, Dante said, his tone deadly quiet. Someone who knew exactly where we'd be and when. I was already moving toward the windows, my training from the past 3 weeks kicking in. Dante had taught me to always check escape routes, to never enter a room without knowing how to leave it alive. How many ways out of this building? I asked Marco. 3. Main elevator, service elevator, and emergency stairs. But Elena, if the feds are... They're not here yet, I interrupted, still staring out at the city. Something was wrong with the street below. Too many black sedans. Too many men in suits trying to look casual. But they will be, soon. As if summoned by my words, Dante's secure phone buzzed. He answered it without taking his eyes off me, a habit he'd developed since the night we destroyed the mansion. Always watching, always protecting, always ready to die for what mattered most to him. See? His face went white as he listened. How many? When? Merda. He ended the call and looked at each family head in turn. Francesca just intercepted federal communications. They're moving on all of us. Simultaneous raids in 15 minutes. The room exploded into motion. Romano was already heading for the stairs while Castellano barked orders into his phone. But Benedetti remained still, his ancient eyes fixed on me with something that might have been approval. You knew, he said. Before the call, you already knew. I felt it, I replied honestly. Something was wrong with the timing, the positioning. This whole meeting was a trap. Then why come? I looked at Dante, who was coordinating escape routes with Marco, while keeping one eye on me. Because sometimes you have to walk into a trap to find out who set it. Understanding dawned in Benedetti's eyes. You know who the informant is. I have suspicions. I moved to Dante's side, lowering my voice. The federal agents aren't here to arrest us, are they? They're here to protect someone. His jaw tightened. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about who suggested this meeting. Who insisted it had to be today, in this building, at this time. I glanced around the room at the remaining family heads. Who knew exactly which route we'd take to get here? Romano, Dante breathed. Not Romano. I kept my voice calm, professional, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. Someone closer. Someone who's been with us since the beginning. Dante's eyes widened as the pieces fell into place. His gaze moved to Marco, who was still coordinating with his men, his back turned to us as he spoke rapidly into his earpiece. No, Dante whispered. He saved our lives. He fought beside us. He also knew every detail of our security protocols, I interrupted gently. He had access to all our safe houses, all our plans. And he was the one who insisted on coming here today, remember? Said it was necessary to meet on neutral ground. The betrayal hit Dante like a physical blow. I could see it in his face. The trust shattering, the memories recontextualizing, the dawning realization that the man he'd considered a brother had been selling them to the highest bidder all along. Marco turned then, as if sensing our attention. His scarred face showed confusion at first, then understanding, then resignation. How long have you known? He asked quietly. About 30 seconds, I replied. How long have you been planning to kill us? His smile was sad, almost fond. I was hoping it wouldn't come to that. The feds promised protection if I delivered you both alive. Why? Dante's voice was hollow, broken in a way that made my chest ache. Because Vincent Torino was my cousin, Marco said simply. Because family matters more than loyalty. Because some betrayals can never be forgiven. He was reaching for his weapon when I shot him. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Marco dropped to the expensive carpet, clutching his shoulder. The same shoulder Dante had so carefully tended weeks ago. Next time aim for the heart, Benedetti said approvingly. Next time I will, I replied, keeping my weapon trained on the man who'd tried to destroy everything we'd built. Dante moved to my side, his arm sliding around my waist in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. We need to go. Now. Together, I said firmly. Together, he agreed. As sirens wailed in the distance and federal agents stormed the building below, we disappeared into the New York underground, not as the naive baker and dangerous mafia boss who'd met months ago, but as partners, equals, two halves of something more dangerous than either could ever be alone. The real war was just beginning. Chapter 10. Empire of Two Hearts. 6 months later, I stood in the garden of our new estate in the Hamptons, watching Dante teach his nephew how to throw a proper punch. The boy, Romano's son, whose father had died in the federal raids, absorbed every word with the intensity of someone who understood that knowledge meant survival. Higher guard. Nico, I called out, adjusting the brim of my sun hat. Your uncle's going to take your head off if you drop your left hand again. The boy grinned and corrected his stance. At 12, he already had the Romano jaw and the kind of sharp intelligence that would serve him well in the family business, or help him escape it entirely. If that's what he chose. Better, Dante said approvingly. Now the most important lesson, when do you fight? When there's no other choice, Nico recited. When someone threatens family. When walking away means losing something you can't live without. Good. And when do you kill? When someone tries to take what's mine and won't listen to reason. I smiled at the familiar words. Dante had been teaching me the same principles, though my education had been considerably more hands-on. The federal raids had scattered the 5 families, but those who survived had emerged stronger, more careful, more united under the Salvatore name. My phone buzzed with a message from Francesca, who was handling business in Rome, all contracts signed. The Mediterranean routes are ours. Then a moment later, when are you giving me grandchildren? I laughed, typing back. When your son stops treating me like I might break if he looks at me wrong. It wasn't entirely true. The protective intensity had faded somewhat as I'd proven myself again and again in the months since the federal raids. But Dante still watched me like I was the most precious and dangerous thing in his world, which I supposed I was. Elena, Dante called. Come settle an argument. Nico thinks he's ready to sit in on business meetings. I rose from my chair, smoothing down the sundress that hid the Glock strapped to my thigh. Image management was crucial in our new life, We appeared to be nothing more than a wealthy couple who'd made smart investments and chose to live quietly. The reality was considerably more complex. What kind of business meetings? I asked Nico seriously. The legitimate ones, he said quickly. Uncle Dante explained about compartmentalization. I understand I'm not ready for the other kind, smart boy. And why do you want to attend the legitimate meetings? Because someday this will all be mine, and I need to understand how it works. All of it. The clean money and the dirty money, and how they become the same thing. His young face was grave with understanding beyond his years, and because I want to be useful, not just protected. I exchanged a look with Dante. We'd had similar conversations about our own roles, about the balance between protection and partnership. The boy was asking for what I'd demanded, to be treated as an asset, not a liability. One meeting, I decided. You sit, you listen, you don't speak unless asked a direct question. And if anything happens, anything at all, you do exactly what we tell you without argument. Nico's face lit up with triumph. Thank you, Aunt Elena. The title still felt strange, but in a good way. I'd never imagined having a family beyond my sister Rosa, who believed I was dead and would continue believing it for her own safety. This strange, dangerous clan I'd married into was my family now, bound by loyalty and blood and the kind of love that showed itself through violence when necessary. Go wash up, Dante told Nico. The Petrov representatives will be here in an hour. As the boy ran toward the house, Dante moved to stand behind me, his arms encircling my waist as we watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. You're good with him, he murmured against my ear. He reminds me of someone, I replied, leaning back into his warmth. Stubborn, protective, convinced he knows what's best for everyone around him. I have no idea who you could possibly mean. His lips found the sensitive spot below my ear, making me shiver despite the warm evening air. Are you happy, Dolcezza? Really happy? It was a question he asked me regularly, usually in quiet moments like this when the business of running a criminal empire faded into the background. He still couldn't quite believe I'd chosen this life willingly, that I thrived in the violence and complexity instead of merely surviving it. Ask me again in 50 years, I said, turning in his arms, when we're old and gray and still trying to keep our grandchildren from killing each other. His smile was soft, tender, the expression he reserved only for me. I love you, Elena Salvatore. I love your strength, your darkness, your absolutely terrifying competence in board meetings and firefights alike. Just the competence? I teased. I love everything. His hands framed my face with reverent care. I love that you chose me. I love that you choose me again every day, despite knowing exactly what that choice means. What it means, I said, standing on my toes to brush my lips against his, is that I get to build something extraordinary with the most dangerous and beautiful man I've ever known. And what are we building exactly? I thought about that as I looked out over our estate. The legitimate businesses and hidden arsenals, the charitable foundations and offshore accounts, the careful balance of respectability and ruthlessness that defined our new empire. A legacy, I said finally. Something worthy of the Salvatore name, something that will protect the people we love and destroy anyone who threatens them. And if the feds come again, if we have to run, fight, disappear, then we do it together. I smiled, feeling the weight of the engagement ring he'd given me properly this time, with flowers, candlelight, and a proposal that lasted 3 hours because he kept stopping to list all the reasons I should say no. That's what partners do. His kiss was soft, reverent, full of promises and possibilities. When he pulled away, his eyes held the same mix of love and possession that had terrified and thrilled me from the very beginning. Together, he agreed, as we walked, back toward the house, toward business meetings and family, dinners and the 1,000 small compromises that made up a life. I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. A year ago, I'd been Elena Martinez, Baker's assistant, living in fear and calling it safety. Now I was Elena Salvatore, partner in an empire built on love and violence in equal measure. I was a woman who could negotiate multi-million-dollar deals in the morning and eliminate threats to my family in the evening. I was exactly who I was meant to be. The woman who'd woken up confused in a mafia boss's bed was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more dangerous, infinitely more alive. I'd found my place in the darkness, and I'd found the man worth sharing it with. And as Dante's hand found mine, and our fingers intertwined, I knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning of our story. After all, empires weren't built in a day, but they were built to last forever.